Welcome back, guys. We are back here, Blaine and I. Where's that coming from? I can already hear noise. Yep, I'm going to mute everything. There we go. All right. So it's me. I'm back, as well as Blaine. He's back. It's been a minute. I mean, you and I were last talking about Louder Milk. I think I remember.
Yeah.
He ended up going he ended up getting drafted.
Yeah.
Yeah.
From the Steelers.
So, yeah. I mean, pretty high too. Like, what was he, a 6th-round pick?
Something like that, yeah.
Yeah. All right, well, I got my buddy in here. How we doing? You're moving to your 18, millionth apartment. So
yeah, no, it's been good. What are we now? Is it 99 Aaron Donald days away from week 1, or is it 98 now?
It's something like that. I'm trying to think. Yeah. But man, I'm excited for the season, as I'm sure you are. It's just we have to get through it. We have to. I mean, luckily Loki's coming up in a little bit, so we'll be able to watch that, kill some time. You got some movies, but it's gonna be a brutal wait. Like, I understand like the whole enjoy your summer and everything, but holy hell, man, I have to wait that much longer to watch Matthew Stafford throw dimes.
Dude, I was thinking the same thing. Like, we have to wait 3 more months to seeing the Rams social media accounts tweet out the the clips. Is just like it's making me get that itch, and I can't wait to see number 9 throwing passes to Cooper Kupp in the back of the end zone. Hopefully over cornerbacks better than Dante Dion. But hey.
Hey, yeah, it's true. What's up, Eric? How you doing over on YouTube? Our guy Nick Hamilton over on Periscope. How we doing? Not much, Nick. Not much. Just chilling here, talking some Rams football. So let's get into it. You wrote an article on downtownrams.com, which everyone can go and check it out. He's the head honcho, not me. I'm just a guy. Okay, he's doing all the work on the website. I'm doing the podcast with Alexis, but he's killing it over there. Literally a one-man rock band. So be sure to follow him at Grisak DTR. You can find that below. But you did an article that like people were coming at you like crazy because you were like, yeah, so Darrell Henderson's actually pretty good at this running back thing. Like, he can be in the NFL, and like, he's not just a backup. Like, he's a guy, like the stats are comparable and all that. And then people are like, how dare you question Cam Akers? How you're a terrible human. Like, I mean, I saw those comments. I mean, we even had some guy spell Sean McVay like it was Slay. So like, take me through that whole thing and your thought process there. Cause I agree with you, but I want you to get your thoughts out there for anybody that missed that.
Yeah, I mean, don't get me wrong. I'm excited about Cam Akers and what he's doing here too. He's obviously the best running back on the Rams roster. Like, there's a reason why he's RB1. But I just kind of feel like, you look at their numbers from last year, and Darrell Henderson and Cam Akers' stats were basically identical. I think Akers had 625 yards and Henderson had 624 yards. And Henderson actually did 624 on less carries. I think he averaged 4.5 yards per carry, and Akers was 4.3 yards per carry. So I just feel like, there's this recency bias here with Cam Akers, because he finished the year really well. Like, he had the playoff game against Seattle where he went over 100, had the 171-yard game against the Patriots that, broke some records. And then he actually had a pretty good game against the Packers as well. So I just like, there's obviously like reason to be excited for Cam Akers, but there's this guy that, up until Henderson got hurt up until the end of the year, he was also having a pretty good season. So I think a lot of people were forgetting about Darrell Henderson. And so I was like, I'm going to not necessarily knock on Akers, but kind of shed some light on, Darrell Henderson is actually really good too. Like, this is a solid combination to have.
Well, and this is a guy you and I were on from the get-go. I mean, you before me. I will give you all the credit. He ended up being RB1 for me, even ahead of Josh Jacobs before the Rams drafted him, way before. And it was weird because it was like, this guy's averaging 8 yards per carry. And like, I understand, it's college, but like, Memphis churns out running backs. And ended up having Anthony Jones Jr., the running back coach, onto the podcast to talk with Alexis and I. And I mean, he raved about Darrell Henderson, and he has all sorts of. He's running that running back factor. I mean, just look at Tony Pollard's another guy. I wouldn't be surprised if he supplants Ezekiel Elliott as soon as next year. Antonio Gibson. So you have these guys coming in the league from this school. I don't think it's crazy to assume that Darrell Henderson's more than just a piece. Like I think he could legitimately start on a few teams in this league, and he's going to get better. And I think the thing that I've been thinking, and I don't know if you agree on this. I know I pitched this to you, and you were kind of like, I'm curious to know what your thoughts are now. It seems like this league, there's the top-notch offenses, or at least some of them, they want to have that extra guy. How many times when Sean McVay took over for the Rams, how many times do we hear the Chris Thompson role? And yet he never really filled that. They went out and they got Lance Dunbar, but like, come on, Lance Dunbar had a cup of coffee and he was gone. So now Darrell Henderson kind of emerges. Sean McVay's going back and watching the tape last year. He's sitting there like, oh, well, Goff, if only he hit him there. Oh, well, Stafford can hit him every time. So, like the wheel routes, things along that nature. That's to me why I actually have him having more receiving yards than rushing yards, because I feel like Henderson can be used like a James White, like a Gio Bernard. We know that Cam Akers is more, put together better. He's a better running back. He brings it all together. But, Tampa has, I was saying this last night with Zach, Tampa has Leonard Fournette. They have Ronald Jones. I think they're both better than Gio Bernard, but they brought in Gio Bernard to play that James White role that's really kind of starting to take over the league. You look at, Tariq Cohen with the Bears. Regardless, even if he is a better running back than Montgomery, they're still using him as that James White role. So what are your thoughts on the idea of doing that, and do you think the Rams would consider that?
Yeah, I mean, I don't think it's necessarily about finding that James White role or finding that Chris Thompson or finding that Tariq Cohen. I think it's just about having two guys that are capable of carrying the ball and having success in the game. I mean, look at Green Bay. They have AJ Dillon and they have Aaron Jones. Look at San Francisco. They just drafted Trey Sermon, but they also have Raheem Mostert, and they also have Raheem Mostert. And going back to last year, they had Jeff Wilson and Raheem Mostert. You look at Baltimore, they have J.K. Dobbins and Mark Ingram, and then you can even add a guy like Gus Edwards in there. There's all these teams, and I'm sure there's more I'm just forgetting, that have these two running backs. And I mean, you hear all the analysts guys saying running backs don't matter, and I mean, there's some truth to it, but there's also, if you have two guys that are capable of carrying the load. I mean, look what the Rams did to Todd Gurley. He has this incredible rookie season, kind of falls off his sophomore year, and then years 3 and 4, he completely goes off under Sean McVay, and then his knee happens, and the Rams completely ran him into the ground. You don't want that with Cam Akers. You want this guy to be your running back for the next 8 years or so, if not longer. This position already has a short career length. So if you have two guys to kind of share the load and share the beating per se, that's a really good problem to have.
Yeah, I agree. And, there's a guy that, I think I had a 4th or 5th round grade on, and, they call him X. I call him X-Man, Xavier Jones, who's also their 3rd running back. And to be honest with you, I think he's a guy that, they felt really good at the running back position. They didn't draft Jake Funk for anything more than to be that special teamer. I mean, he's a demon in the special teams game. You can go back, you can watch him, covering the kicks. I mean, he's lethal, man. He can tackle, he can lay the wood. I was surprised dude has a hit stick, but I think, Xavier Jones is also, he offers upside, and, you have two running backs. Let's be real here. Let's just 100% be real. Let's tell it like it is. The Rams have two running backs that both got hurt last year. Okay. And to me, having running backs that both got hurt, Henderson's had issues since he came into the league. There's a chance we're going to see Xavier Jones. And, to me, I think it's good to be 3 deep, especially in this league. It's good to be 4 deep. I don't think that they got Jake Funk for anything more than just what he can do in special teams, but I'm not going to rule him out. If there were injuries, this guy couldn't come in and actually do something.
Yeah, I mean Xavier Jones is a guy that but I am excited about. The Rams were three running backs deep last year. They lost Malcolm Brown in free agency. But some numbers I just want to bring up just because I think some people will be a little surprised at this. I was looking just in my article, looked at some of the analytics, and I mean you can throw out PFF for whatever it is, but I'm not even looking at PFF. This is Football Outsiders, which takes context into it. They take opponent into it. They when people look at analytics and say, "I'll watch a film," you're missing all this context. Well, Football Outsiders does a pretty decent job of incorporating that context. So in DYAR, Cam Akers ranked 41st. Darrell Henderson ranked 9th in that statistic. In DVOA, which also takes opponent into account, Cam Akers ranked 41st. Darrell Henderson ranked 4th. So just analytics wise, Darrell Henderson does very well. So I don't necessarily mean that. I don't think those mean that Darrell Henderson is necessarily the best running back on the Rams roster, but I think it means that he's making the most of his opportunities that he is getting. And another thing too is that when we lost Malcolm Brown in free agency, people were like, "Oh, we're gonna miss the short yardage back." Because let's be real, like Malcolm Brown was a short yardage back for the Rams. That was his role. Well, last year, Darrell Henderson led the Rams running backs in touchdowns with 5. Four of those touchdowns came inside the 5-yard line. and Jake, let's take a step further. Go to week 16 against the Seahawks. There was a turning point in that game when the Rams got stuffed.
My God, I know. 4
straight times at the 1-yard line. Guess what happened? Right before that sequence, Darrell Henderson busts the right and gets pushed out of bounds. I believe it was Jamal Adams, and Henderson isn't in there for that goal line sequence, and the Rams get stuffed at the goal line. The next week, Henderson is out with that same injury, and the Rams get stuffed at. Akers fumbles it at the 1, and they get stuffed at the 1 again. They get stuffed inside the 5. So I think that's an underrated.
That was John Wolford's fault, though.
Yeah, right. Yeah, of course, everything was John Wolford's fault.
Yeah.
But yeah, I think that's just an underrated aspect of Henderson's game that people just, I think, see Henderson as this fast, speedy guy, but he's actually, I think, has a short yardage element to his game that I think people just don't quite realize.
I think you're right there, and I mean, I don't know. I look at it in terms of this, you can like all the backs on this roster. You can like none of them. It's totally up to you. But like this idea, if you don't worship the ground Cam Akers is walking on, then that means you hate him. I just don't really subscribe to that notion. But with the receiver group, interestingly enough, Julio Jones came up in a lot of discussion, and I think I've been talking about him all the time. It seems like he's constantly asked about. I know we had someone earlier asking, can we get Jones without giving up more than a third in Jefferson? So I mean, there are people asking, "What's up, JB? How we doing?" The fact of the matter is this: I don't think Julio Jones is going to end up with the Rams. It seems like they're out. Now we can kind of focus on what the Rams have. And what we do know that they have is they have Cooper Kupp, they have Robert Woods, they have Van Jefferson, they have Deshaun Jackson, they have Tutu Atwell, and they have Ben Skowronek, as well as other guys that, they're trying to fight for a roster spot. I'm pretty high, and people that I've talked to around the Rams are really high on Ben Skowronek. And I find that really intriguing to me, because I don't feel like this guy was just a 7th round pick that they just drafted just to draft. I don't feel like he's a Clay Johnston where they'll cut him. Like, I think they're looking at him long term as a guy at 6'3", 211, offering something they don't actively have on the outside, because they are turning Jacob Harris, what it seems, into a tight end. So because of that, I think it offers a huge opportunity for Ben Sko, especially in the red zone. And I think, the Rams, this is not something that is exclusive to the Rams. Sean McVay struggled in the red zone going back to Washington. That was, he struggled calling plays in the red zone. I think there's a reason that the Rams went out and added 6'4", 5", Jacob Harris. And there's a reason they added 6'3" Ben Skowronek. There's a reason why they added a guy like Bryson Hopkins at 6'5". They have Tyler Higg. I mean, there are big-bodied receivers that, receiving options that I think Stafford is going to have a killing thrown to these guys. I mean, it doesn't matter who is out there. I feel like Stafford's already proven, throughout his time in the NFL, he can throw to Danny Amendola up the seam and run a seam buster with Danny Amendola with two guys next to him. And he's like, I know my arm's good enough to fit in between those two defenders and put it right on the money. It's up to Danny to catch the ball. Or, gotta love the UDFA Hunter Bryant, the tight end. He's throwing this deep seam route to him into double coverage against the Titans. Or the one throw he makes to Jesse James against the Saints in the back of the end zone, back shoulder fade. That's just like has to be. This is like the margin for error, and he just so. I feel like somebody like Ben Skowronek, if they believe in him, or somebody like Jacob Harris, or somebody like Bryson Hopkins could have a significant role in the red zone. What are your thoughts on this receiver group as a whole? And then my red zone point, what are your thoughts with that?
Yeah, no, I really like the Rams receiving group. I think you look back to last year, they had a lot of guys that all did the same exact thing. I mean, Cooper Kupp, Robert Woods, and Van Jefferson are all very precise route runners, very reliable hands. Not really gonna like they're not that Julio Jones type. They're not gonna go up and get the ball per se, unless like the one scenario where Kupp goes over Jamal Adams and catches the ball in the playoff game. That was ridiculous. But I think this year they added that variety. They lose a guy like Josh Reynolds who, again, like he was I think they just wanted him to be that big body wide receiver, but I don't think that's what he was. He ended up being a lot like a Robert Woods, that just precise routes, reliable hands at times, and et cetera. So I think adding someone like Ben Skowronek in Reynolds, I like to say you had Tarzan that played like Jane, but I don't think that's giving. I don't really like saying that too much, just because I think that discredits Reynolds. But I think in Ben Skowronek, you have a guy that can go up and get it. So I think we're really looking forward to him in that aspect. And then you have Jacob Harris, so I think is a huge project. But if he comes to his potential, him and Bryson Hopkins are going to be quite the tight end duo down the line, I think. So yeah, I mean, I like this group. I think they have that variety. They have two outrun Deshaun Jackson are two burners. You have Ben Skowronek, who is this guy that can go up and get the ball. And be a red zone threat potentially. I assume McVay will have a package in the red zone for him, and then you have your two Mr. Reliables and Cooper Kupp and Robert Woods that when they have their number called, they're going to be there for you. And they're going to make a play. So I like the variety. And I think that's just something the Rams lacked last year.
I agree. I think they diversified the receiver room. And not just the receiver room, just the weapons in general. And the thing that I find interesting is, Bryson Hopkins, like I told you, I interviewed him at the Senior Bowl when, coming into the draft. And when I talked to him, off air, he explained the Rams meeting. They did not mention Gerald Everett once to him. They envisioned a tandem with him and Tyler Higbee. And so I think, people are really quick to already push this guy out the door. I think that they're going to try to make all these guys work. And like, if you're worried about like Johnny Munt, like, no offense, I like Johnny Munt, and I'm really like, I feel really bad for him because I feel like he could have been a big time tight end, serious athleticism, suffered 2 torn ACLs at Oregon. People don't realize that. So he became a blocking tight end, right? But in reality, he was supposed to be like an all around tight end, maybe go in the 4th round, 3rd round, what have you.
Let me ask you something really quick, Jake. Just on the wide receivers. How many wide receivers do you think that they'll keep? I mean, you have Tutu Atwell, you have Van Jefferson, Woods, Kupp, Skowronek. Who am I missing? I'm missing one more. Deshaun Jackson. So that's 6. You have these. You have Simba Webster, obviously. You have Tristan Jackson, Landon Akers. A guy that I like his returnability and Jeremiah Hadel. Do you think they need to keep 7?
I think if they keep 7, it's going to be Hadel. I mean, it makes no sense to keep the other guys because I think they can easily be put on the practice squad. Hadel offers something none of them offer, and that's his return ability. And you're the one that brought that up. So this is entirely because of you doing the homework that no one else did. And so I saw that film clip that you put up, and then I went into him, and I'm like, all right, this guy, he ran a 4.8. Like, he didn't have a good RAS score at all, but like, he's another one of those, plays faster than, testing. And I noticed that. And on top of that, like, everyone just assumes you put a burner to be a returner. That's not normally the case. I mean, Farrell Cooper ran what, a 4.63? He wasn't like a super, fast guy, but it was his vision. And so to me, I watch, Jeremiah Hadel, and it's that vision. Like, he sees things open up before they do. He sees the potential. Oh, if I cut here, or if I make this move, I'm reading this block, I'm anticipating this block, so I'm going to have this option, or I could go this way. He sets himself up, and he's got some quick feet where he can actually change direction, and that's the thing that the 40 time doesn't measure. So yes, he ran a 4.8, but he's still housing it. So how do you run a 4.8 but can house it and take it to the distance on a kick return? You know what I mean? So that's the thing. I don't worry too much about that. I like the 40 time for like safeties, for corners, things like that. I don't really worry about it with like kick returners, because I find more often than not, kick returners will have a 4.640, but it's all it's all about the mentality, the vision, and of course the ball security. And Jeremiah Hadel doesn't hold the ball like, no offense to Deshaun Jackson, but the dude palms the ball. I can't stand that. Like, I don't have to worry about the ball security with Hadel, So I think he'd be the option. And how many? There's now 16 practice squad spots.
I think so. Yeah, something like that.
So they increased it by 3. That's crazy. I mean, and if that's the case, then Tristan Jackson, who made it last year, is 100% going to be on the practice squad. They're not going to let him go because he made the actual roster. Koski was on the practice squad. I saw Landon Akers playing on that play that John Wolford threw that touchdown to Jacob Harris that went viral. Mm-hmm. Landon Akers was the guy next to him. So he was out there with those guys. I don't know if you want to read too much into that because they could be rotating him, but that's kind of a big deal if he's out there already with the twos, So something to keep an eye on. But I think Tristan Jackson, I'd be shocked if he wasn't on the practice squad. The other guys, I'm not really sure. Again, Koski, practice squad last year. Akers, I don't know too much about, but I think they have a good group, and I think Simba Webster needs to have the preseason of his life, because I do think he has some serious competition at the return spot. He has the fans, unfortunately, really turning on him. And I mean, let's be real here. We saw what Farrell Cooper could do, and now, like, I feel like people have grown accustomed to, like, okay, where do we get that again? Like, what, you know what I mean? Like, it was like, okay, our returner's Danny Amendola. Like, he's solid, but like not amazing, not like a guy that jumps out at you. And then you had, Tavon Austin, who was a big name, so he got away with a lot. But it's like, Farrell Cooper comes in, and he's a Pro Bowler, all pro actually. And it's like, people have not gotten over that. And so when JoJo Natson came in, it was no way he was going to fill those shoes. Yeah. And then Simba Webster, it's almost like you're setting yourself up to fail. So I'm almost curious, like, if it would be better to go. I don't think Raymond Calais is going to make the roster, to be honest with you, because I think they'll keep 4 running backs, and that will be their tough cut. And he'll probably be on the practice squad. But if they do that whole practice squad thing, you can obviously take a guy off and designate them for the game. I would like him returning kicks, if not Hadel, because I like Calais with the ball in space. I like his vision. I think Simba Webster's out, and he's the guy I interviewed. I like him. He comes from Eastern Washington. They've put guys in the league, obviously Cup and Kendrick Bourne, but he's going to have the preseason of a lifetime in order for him to stay on this roster.
Yeah, no, I agree. I think Webster's on his way on his way out. Like you said, he's going to have the preseason of his life if he's going to stay. I think the one thing that he has going for him, like if the Rams keep seven wide receivers, Webster has 2 years of experience in the offense. He has, it may not be good experience necessarily, but he has experience returning kicks and returning punts. So if they keep seven, is he a guy that they keep as their seventh? Because I do think McVay is somebody that values experience.
Yeah, I agree with you there. And then, that's just talking about the receiving weapons. Let's talk a little bit about the offensive line. We don't have anything to worry about with quarterback. The Rams have like the best quarterback situation they've had since they had Kurt Warner and Bulger in the same room. Like we don't have to worry about that. So looking at the offensive line, the projected offensive line, you're looking at Whitworth, you're looking at Edwards playing left guard, Corbett kicked over to center, which isn't a big issue. He's played center. I'm not worried about it. Bobby Evans at right guard, and then Rob Havenstein at right tackle. Now, the interesting thing is that they love Tremaine Ankrum. So, I mean, if Havenstein really struggled, I would not be surprised if they try to put him in this year, because it seems like everything that I had heard and like I've watched and I've researched, they just loved him. And the thing is that it was really funny is I forget what Scout was talking about when he went to Clemson and saw this kid. They heard about Tremaine Ankrum, and he's like, immediately you hear Tremaine Ankrum and you're thinking 6'5", 310. And I get there and he's the small one, but he's starting ahead of all the 6'5" brutes. So, this guy's 6'2", and he's like, I really like his ability, could, project in at center, could play guard, but can also play tackle. And he played some meaningful football at Clemson. Obviously, won 2 national titles. So I look at him, he's the wild card because I think he can play all 5 positions. Sean McVay mentioned that in the post-draft interview of the 2021 draft. They did like a thing over on the Rams.com, and he mentioned that. He said they really liked Ankrum. He also mentioned Burgess by name, which we'll get to. But what are your thoughts on this offensive line? Because I know everyone's like, oh, Morgan Moses is available, go get him. Or, oh, this guy's available, go get him. And Blaine, I'll be honest with you, I don't love like guys like Demby and Brian Allen and Coleman Shelton. But if the Rams brought in a brand new offensive line coach and he literally looked at this and was like, I got nothing. We don't really have to do anything. I'm gonna side with the Rams on this one. What about you?
Yeah, I still think there's some overreaction to 2019 just because of how bad the Rams offensive line was. But last year, again, take PFF for what it is, but they were the 3rd ranked offensive line according to PFF. Like they played really well last year at times. I mean, there were times where they did get overpowered a little bit. No offensive line is perfect, but they played really well. And I think you look at Rams offensive line and look at other offensive lines around the league. Name another offensive line or 2 or 3 that are 2 guys deep. I mean, if Andrew Whitworth gets hurt, you have Joseph Noteboom, who when Whitworth was out last year, Noteboom played actually really well at left tackle. At left guard, again, Noteboom can slide in there at left guard. Center is where things make it a little tricky, but you have Brian Allen who's there who has starting experience, and you can take that for what it's worth. But starting experience at center is really important. And I mean, depending on if Tremaine Ankrum can play center, I mean, throw in Tremaine Ankrum for all I care. At right guard, I mean, if Evans gets hurt again, you can slide David Edwards played there last year. Put Edwards in at right guard and put no at left guard. And at right tackle, again, Bobby Evans has experience at right tackle. You can put you can do some maneuvering, but again, like the Rams have options, and they have out there. I think this is a situation where if an injury too does happen, then maybe you have you have 2019 all over again. But I think for the most part, this offensive line is deep. Yes, I would have liked them to take Creed Humphrey in the 2nd round still, but I do like the group that they have, and I think you bring up a great point that I hadn't thought of. The Rams brought in a new offensive line coach, and like you said, he's not we're good. That there's two guys from Stanford that I coached at Stanford, but no, I like this group that we have here. Like, go for a different position. It's fine.
I feel like I gained a ton of respect for Carberry, not even knowing him, just because he didn't go and go favoritism route, And honestly, I would have given him a pass for that. Like, they were good football players. I liked Drew Dahlman. I wanted Drew Dahlman. I liked okay, Walker Little I didn't love, but there's a lot of red flag there, and he went early. So I really do appreciate that he looked at this offensive line in some capacity and was like, you know what? I don't really need to go out and get the guy that coached. We have it here, and the thing that I think is kind of not really touched on by people, especially the national media, is that the Rams have deceptive depth. What I mean by that is they didn't draft guys to play guard or tackle or center. So on a depth chart, for somebody that doesn't watch this team, doesn't know, isn't like involved, isn't, checking out what Blaine's doing on downtownrams.com, isn't checking out Jordan Rodrigue, friend of the show, like, they don't realize. But they drafted Joe Noteboom and Bobby Evans, who are, yes, tackles, but can also play guard. And they drafted a Tremaine Ankrum who could play all 5 positions. And, oh, by the way, they drafted that, or they didn't draft him, but they traded for Corbett, who was the 2019 33rd overall pick. Brilliant trade by Snead. Actually, it might have been 2018. 2018 33rd overall pick for a 5th rounder in 2020, 2021. And he can play all over the line. So again, it's deceptive depth. It's depth that people aren't paying attention to. Rams fans are. And honestly, not all Rams fans are, because I constantly hear the Rams have no offensive line. I don't know who's going to play on the offensive line. Yes, you do. Yes, you do. They're out there. And like you said, 3rd overall, according to PFF. PFF isn't the Bible, but PFF is something. And I look at Whitworth, and I don't expect him to drop off significantly since he came back from a major injury in the middle of the year, got ready for the postseason, and I thought he played pretty well. And then you look at, Edwards, who also can play tackle and played guard, and he's somebody they like at left guard. Corbett played really well last year. Evans is the one, I think he plays better on the right side, but we'll definitely see about that. And then Havenstein, I get on Havenstein all the time, but it's because the league is getting more athletic off the edge. And Havenstein, we do know his biggest Achilles heel is against speed rushers. He just can't do it. Like, he struggles. So aside from that, you can't just say, well, since Havenstein struggles against speed rushers, that we're going to take away everything else great he does. Because in 2018, he was one of the best tackles in football. That's the thing. And so he's had some injuries, and he played through some injuries, and wasn't vocal about his injuries, so people would get on him, including me. But if this guy's fully healthy, I can understand and be like, look, I like the way we're set up here, and I don't want to spend more draft capital on the offensive line, because while you can think about this, it just basically pushes the guys. It's counterproductive, because offensive line is different. You have to think about last year also. They also got Chandler Brewer back, who Sean McVay apparently is really a huge fan of from the COVID opt-out. But when you think about it, Blaine, is that it's counterproductive, because you draft these offensive linemen. They weren't even able to play in the preseason last year, So offensive line, unlike any other position, is just, it's so hard, because how many days are you in pads? How many days are you practicing? It's all, there's strict guidelines. And so for me, I think last year, a lot of these guys got like a mulligan because they didn't have a preseason. And on top of that, just talking about the guys that they have, there's a guy that I haven't mentioned yet who they really, really like, and I told you this, and that is Alaric Jackson, a guy that they had a draftable grade on. They liked him a lot. He somehow fell. I think it was because of the testing, but he comes from Iowa. I love Iowa offensive linemen. They just have a different breed of like, they're just so, I don't know what it is. They got this mean streak to them. And I really like that pickup. So, I mean, we'll see. But they have a lot of depth. And I think it's time to stop worrying about their offensive line.
And I think that another point, too, is that, you know, whoever the Rams had at quarterback the last 3-4 years. They've had a Jared Goff, a pocket passer who sits in the pocket, and his strength wasn't escaping the pocket and running around and making defenders miss. That is what that is something Matthew Stafford is very good at, and something that he does. And I think that's an aspect that I think will, in a sense, you might get an extra holding call or two, but for the most part, I think, you know, if Havenstein does allow a speed rusher to get past him, that's rusher that Stafford can potentially evade.
I agree with you. I'm actually I'm looking for that thing I sent you, the analytic thing, because I want to see if I can post that, or not post it, but I want to see what I can do with this. Let's see here, because I found that really interesting. I know you know I found that really interesting, and you found it interesting. Stafford had similar analytic output to Patrick Mahomes, and by similar, like almost identical. So let me see what I can do here by doing this thing. And let's see, share. It's not going to work, I don't think. Well, anyway, I'll post it on social media or something because it's pretty cool. But yeah, well, let's see. I have it right here, so I'll just read it. Stafford, when we were going over this, the scrambling EPA per rush, Stafford has the best scrambling grade analytically of anybody in the NFL at quarterback from last year. So that's including everybody. And that's, I'm assuming, like, Blaine, you know more about the analytics than I do. But that takes into account when you're running, why you're running, how much you're running, and all that. I assume it takes into account your your consistency, your production. Yep.
Yeah, it should.
So I'm looking at this thing and I'm like, who has the worst thing here? Tom Brady. I mean, he's a statue at this point. I'm not going to throw shade at him. I mean, dude's playing into his 40s. But let's look at Jared Goff. And his was negative 0.10. Stafford's was 0.74, which was the highest. The second highest was actually Carson Wentz at 0.69. And then, let's see here. We had Kyler Murray at 0.61, and that's that. So that's an Aaron Rodgers at 0.6. So, that's pretty good. But Jared Goff was at 0.1.
What did you tell you? It was negative 0.1?
Oh, yeah. Sorry. It was negative 0.1, which is, let's see. I mean, it's not negative 0.4 like Brady, but it is the third worst behind Brady and Joe Burrow, who had negative 0.14. So that's something.
I think the Rams offensive line, I do have faith in them, but in the I think there were plays last year that that Goff could have escaped that didn't because he couldn't, and I think those are plays that Stafford is going to be able to make. I think that's going to be one of the biggest differences between. There are a lot of differences between Jared Goff and Matthew Stafford, but I think that's one of them.
The play action pass thing I thought was funny because it's like if you talk to any Rams fan, that instantly it's Jared Goff is a king with play action. But when you look at this, it's 0.03, which isn't horrible, but it's not It's not like good. It's right around Tua Tagovailoa territory. And then Stafford is 0.23, which is upper echelon. The only guy ahead of Stafford, Tom Brady at 0.3. Aaron Rodgers at 0.32 and Jameis Winston at 0.35. But Jameis Winston, that's from 2019. So that, I mean, they ran a lot of play action in that Tampa offense, which is why Tom Brady is so high. And it's just, it's really interesting to me. And then you look at the pressure here, and wouldn't you know it, Stafford, while he has a negative pressure grade, it's considered good because he has a negative 0.2 pressure grade. Goff has a negative 0.6 pressure grade. And I think everybody would tell you that the Rams offensive line was worse or was better than the Lions offensive line.
Yeah.
But it shows you what Stafford was able to do. Deep accuracy on target. Goff fans, cover your ears on this one. 41% Jared Goff. Matthew Stafford, 59%. Patrick Mahomes, 59%. And then the next one is intermediate accuracy on target percentage. Stafford, 72%. Patrick Mahomes, 73%. And then let's see, at short accuracy on target percentage, Stafford at 83%, Patrick Mahomes at 84%. Accuracy versus man on target percentage, Stafford at 69%, Patrick Mahomes at 76%. And then accuracy versus zone, Stafford at 78% and Mahomes at 76%. That's it for the analytics there. It kind of just, just a little bit of a thing out there. It shows you that Stafford's pretty damn good. And this offensive line is in good hands. Yes, I know what I just said. The offensive line is in good hands because, the thing that can help your offensive line is having a good quarterback that can have pocket mobility. I'm not asking you to run for 50 yards. I'm just asking you to simply have the wherewithal, step up in the pocket, make a, subtle movement, manipulate, things along that nature. And I think Stafford just does that at an incredible rate.
Yeah, I mean, we said at the beginning of the show, we're really looking forward to seeing Stafford taking actual snaps. I mean, seeing these clips is getting me really excited. And Rams fans are going to be able to see him. I think they're doing a season ticket holder event or training camp event on June 10th. So fans will be able to see him in as close to live action as you're going to get at this point in the offseason. And I'll be jealous for the Rams fans that get to go to that. Because I'm really looking forward to seeing what Stafford's going to be able to do. Because I mean, as your projection showed, he could have a really big year this year.
Yeah, I mean, I have him throwing 51 touchdowns, 59 not 59. That would be insane. 9 interceptions, not 59. Yeah. What's up? What's up, Paul? How we doing? Aiden says Stafford's underrated GOAT. You have yikes. One funky Lions fan said that's funny because there are Lions fans that think Goff is leaps and bounds ahead of Stafford.
Oh my God. You're in for a huge wake up call if you think that.
Yeah, the Lions fans are really interesting. I've gotten 50. I knew someone would. I knew it would be Aiden of all people too. Now I feel like with the Lions fans, they've been pretty cool. I've gotten a lot of Lions fans joining this channel, subscribing, all of that. But I've also had some Lions fans that are they just drill on Stafford, and I'm like, but you do realize like where he was coming from, what he was surrounded with. 11 or 12 is the number for how many times he had a 100-yard rusher. I mean, I'm just saying, so look, I think Jared Goff is going to play pretty well with the Lions, but it's just Stafford is light years ahead of Goff at this point, and Goff has to prove that he's even in a conversation with him, in my opinion. So that's something. But I think really quickly hitting on the defense, I think looking at this, it's going to be really interesting. I just finished my projection videos. You have Taylor Rapp, you have Burgess, you have Fuller. I'm feeling really, really good about the safeties. And it's weird because when you lose a player the caliber of John Johnson, normally you'd be like, oh, that's a sting, that's a brutal, that's a punch to the throat. But I feel pretty good about it because the thing I'm looking at is that I think Burgess can play all the positions. You look at him at Utah, he played dime backer, he played nickel, he played both safety spots, even in the same game. And then you look at Taylor Rapp, who I've admitted today after going back and watching the film from 2019, he had a damn good rookie year. And unfortunately, it's not his fault, but the Rams picked him over DK Metcalf, and I think that literally clouded my judgment for 2 years. So I'm excited for him. And Jordan Fuller, I hated the pick. I mean, it was a 6th rounder. I shouldn't have hated it. But now it's like Jordan Fuller comes in, and now he looks like the head honcho in the back end. They look really good at safety and everything else. They obviously nothing's guaranteed, but I'm really impressed with the safety position. What are your thoughts?
Let's just say I'm not as optimistic. I'll say they have a high ceiling for sure. I just I think when you no, don't get me wrong. I don't think I was one of the few Rams fans that were like, fine, yeah, let John Johnson third walk. Like, you're not gonna pay $15 million in today's NFL. It doesn't make sense. The Rams don't have the salary cap to do it. You have other positions to fill. Johnson played well in a salary cap that was affected by COVID. Like, Rams didn't really have much of a choice. But I just think that there's so many unknowns, I guess, where like I like having known quantities. And last year, Burgess, he played well when he played, but he was hurt a lot of the year. Jordan Fuller played well when he played, but he also was hurt for some of the year. Taylor Rapp, he plays well where he's strong, and that's inside the box, but he also struggles in coverage and seems to get lost in the secondary sometimes. Nick Scott played well at the end of the year, filling in. But again, like, that's a 7th round pick that was a special teamer that, I'm not sure he's someone I can say right now that I trust him taking starting snaps. But I like the versatility in guys like Burgess. I like the potential here. I just, until I see them in action, I'm someone like I need to see it to believe it, and I'm gonna need to see these guys playing in Raheem Morris's system before I can say, yeah, the secondary is really good.
Well, I can't blame you for that. I think that's definitely logical. You can't just expect right off the bat. I mean, my projections, I didn't have them going like 144 tackles or anything like that. But I think Burgess could have a good year as far as, interceptions wise, pass breakups, things along that nature. I think he'll have around 60. I think I said 61 exactly. And then I think, Taylor Rapp's around like 50 tackles. So, for me, I really do like what they did there. And then I like that they got Bobby Brown in the interior. I like that they added Robert Rochelle at corner. And the Ernest Jones pick just grows on me every day because it was never about Ernest Jones. And you and I discussed this. I felt like Ernest Jones was always going to end up a Ram. I just didn't think it was going to happen in the 3rd round, especially when Baron Browning was there, especially when Dylan Moses, who eventually we found out the medical was really bad on that. And especially with Jabril Cox, the guy that, people were saying was going to go off the board in the 40s. The fact that he was there and the Rams passed up on him and Baron Browning, I was like, it was hard, man. It was a tough pill to swallow. But, you look at Ernest Jones, and I think he's another tail of the tape, plays faster than he tested. And this kind of goes to show you, the Rams did draft guys like Jacob Harris that tested really well and Jake Funk, but it's not all about that. They go by their own metrics. And, I think more teams should do that because I think the Rams have done a nice job. I mean, they said to everybody, look, we don't care about Cooper Kupp's 40 time. We would have taken him in the 2nd round, that's the thing, is that he fell to the 3rd round. They liked him more than Everett. I don't know if you knew that.
No, I did not know that at all. That's crazy.
Yeah, so I would love to know who the hell decided to pick Gerald Everett over Cooper Kupp, and also would not love to know that because I'd rather just, let's just move on from that. Not saying that Gerald Everett was terrible, but he didn't end up being George Kittle, who they could have gotten in the 5th round.
Yeah. What's gonna like really hurt is that Gerald Everett goes to Seattle along with Shane Waldron, and I guarantee you Gerald Everett's scoring like 4 touchdowns next year.
Oh, I think Gerald Everett's a guy, if you don't have him in fantasy and you're doing a redraft or you're drafting for your dynasty league, Gerald Everett is 100% a guy I'm picking up because he's going to be a pretty big part of that offense, I think. I mean, don't get me wrong. They have weapons and they could add Julio Jones, God forbid, but Everett's better than most tight ends that they've had is skill set wise. He obviously doesn't have the same career, that a Jimmy Graham has had. But I do think skill set wise, he's the best tight end that's come around the Seahawks in a while.
Yeah, no, it's gonna be interesting for sure. It's gonna be weird seeing him in a Seahawks uniform for starters. But
and obviously that magical moment against the Chiefs, we'll never forget that. I did like Gerald, and we met him, but it didn't work out, and so they didn't bring him back for a contract. And same thing with Josh Reynolds. I remember when he got drafted, he's like, "You're gonna have to, when I'm done, you're gonna have to pay me a big contract." I was like, about that.
Yeah.
So yeah, I mean, I think the Rams, all in all, and I know you're more like, you're not exactly the optimist I am. I'm like Mr. Optimistic, but I feel good when I see Blaine giving them 14 wins this year. I mean,
14 wins.
I'm just saying. I think you and I being off by 1 win is a pretty big deal. I have 15-2. You have 14-3. I mean, I have a hard time finding losses on the schedule. I know that's a very cliche thing to say, but it's true. I'm not going to sit here and lie to you just so I don't sound cliche. Like, who do you 100% are like, I have to give them a loss, man. They have no chance of winning that game.
I mean, nobody, honestly. Like, I mean, Tampa Bay is gonna be tough, obviously, but we beat them last year. Aaron Rodgers has left. He's by his standards, he's left Green Bay. He's done, and so that game got a lot easier. I mean, you have to assume maybe you split with Seattle, maybe you split with San Francisco, but the Rams have the talent to beat both of them, honestly. So yeah, there's not a game where you point to, yep, that's a loss. Like I had to find losses.
I hear you, man. Well, hey, we could talk all night, but I know you're rocking the iPad tonight, and
Yes.
we won't get into as to why, but hopefully, rest in peace to your MacBook, or hopefully there's it could be resuscitated.
I put it in the mail and it's on its way to surgery right now. So
okay, all right. Well, hopefully it makes it through surgery and it's not one of those Grey's Anatomy things where all hell breaks loose. So that's gonna do it for us. Appreciate you guys tuning in. I'll be back in an hour or so. We'll do a gaming stream. But Blaine, thank you so much for coming on. Thank you guys for tuning in. And I'll talk to you guys in a little bit, but go make sure you follow the main man at downtownrams.com at bgrisakdtr on Twitter. You guys take care. I'll see you guys in a bit. Later.